Boggy greetings and welcome to the March edition of RE-PEAT's Bog Standard. Wherever you are, we hope that spring is beginning to awaken and that you'll find the time to wander and observe small moments of rebirth that come with the changing of seasons. Instead of updating you on all the work RE-PEAT has been up to, we are taking some time this month to look outwards and shed some light on marvelous PT ecosystems around Europe that you might not be familiar with. So listen on, dear bog lover, because this newsletter will be dedicated to insights, experiences, and celebrations of all things boggy in Estonia. We hope to continue our peatland spotlights in the coming months, so if there's a country or region you'd love to learn more about, do let us know. Or if you're from a country with a connection to peatlands and want to share your story, we would be delighted to know more about it. You can reach out to us through our email info@repeat.earth. The interviews that follow are from 3 different perspectives: an artist, an activist, and a landscape architect. We are grateful that they shared their love for Estonian peatlands with us, and we are so excited to share their insights with you. These 3 interviews represent personal views, memories, and stories from Estonian peatlands, and do not aim to present a universal experience or narrative. But before we get to the interviews, let's learn a bit about Estonia's peatland ecosystems. If measured in relation to its relatively small area, Estonia is the second most peatland-rich country in the world, with 20% of its territory covered with peat soils. Yet, because of a long and ongoing history of drainage, pristine peatlands with ongoing peat formation account for only about a quarter of the total area. Currently, 70% of Estonian peatlands have been indirectly or directly affected by degradation, which not only threatens these ecosystems but presents an enormous risk to the carbon storage and to the climate stabilization services they provide. In fact, according to a 2015 report by the Nordic Council of Ministers, emissions from drained and damaged peatlands in Estonia account for more carbon emissions than all of the country's cars and trucks combined. Despite this, Estonia continues to extract approximately 1 million tons of peat each year, making them one of the top 5 peat exporting countries in the world. And the relationship comes right back to those of us based in the Netherlands, as the Dutch flower industry is completely dependent on the import of Estonian peat. Yet, aside from the troubled climatic and economic history of peatland use in Estonia, bogs are an indispensable element of Estonian culture. They were historic sites of refuge for religious minorities and have a rich history of folklore legends and supernatural characters who inhabit these mysterious sites. There is even an Estonian guardian spirit of the boglands, called Sovana, known to live and appear within the mists that move across the surface of bogs. The close ties between Estonian culture and their unique landscape extends to the Estonian language as well, which has a disproportionately high amount of words to describe natural sounds such as the movement of wind or water. Estonia's history, its present and its future cannot be separated from the boglands that shape the country's economy, climate and culture. With the interviews that follow, these long-standing connections are made personal, so let's turn over the spotlight to Katerina, Nelly, and Mary-Liz to learn more about their personal connections with the peatlands of Estonia. Interview with Katerina. The recorded answers were not read by the author. How does your art practice relate to, build on, or show your relationship to a sense of home within the Estonian landscape and with peatlands in particular?
I'm very proud to be Estonian, so when creating work about Estonia, I try to use my own reference images I've taken from the Estonian nature and peatlands. I'm basically painting what I'm seeing. For example, in the 4-part series I created for RE-PEAT, the first landscape was based on real places here in Estonia that I've been to and taken pictures of.
How do you translate your connection to land into pieces of art? Would you shed some light on your process?
In the simplest terms, I like spending my time in nature and I paint what I like. When I find something interesting while out and about, I take a picture with my phone. For example, in the summer when the flowers are blooming in the garden, I just sit in the grass and watch the bees on the flowers. I take many photos of all the different bees that I find during that time. Or when I'm foraging in the forest, I take pictures of the mushrooms I find. After that, I try to paint them at home, although not everything gets painted. I have so many photos that are still waiting for their time, and I might never get to them as I keep finding new things to take photos of. Ideally, I'd like to start keeping a nature journal too. as a way to use all the photos that I've taken over the years and keep track of the current year.
Is there a piece of yours that is especially important to you and why?
It might be this painting I did last year of these blue-green stropharia mushrooms. I like this painting because these are my favorite mushrooms and I wanted to experiment more with my art. I love details, and painting all the small bits around the mushrooms really made it a special experience as well. As a bit of a perfectionist, I'm very rarely 100% satisfied with my illustrations, yet this piece made me feel very proud.
Do you happen to have a specific memory you would like to share about an experience in an Estonian peatland?
It's difficult to pick just one, as we have many gorgeous peatlands here, but if I have to choose one memory, it would probably be about the Majakivi Pikanama study trail. It's located in the Lahemaa National Park, and the trail takes you to the third largest boulder in Estonia, the Majakivi, which you can climb. As someone who is afraid of heights and ladders, climbing on top of the boulder and then having lunch on top of it was definitely memorable. If you're lucky, you can also see the round-leaved sundew here, which is a carnivorous plant. I recommend going there in May or June when the hare's tail cotton grass is blooming, as that gives the whole landscape a very magical feel.
What is something you want people to know about Estonian peatlands, or something you don't think is rightly understood about this landscape?
That they're full of life. I feel like some people overlook the peatlands as they might seem like they're desolate, especially when you go on a gray day and everything seems brown and dead. They might even think, why should we protect something like that if it's already dead? Yet if you take a closer look, you'll see all this life hidden away in plain sight. So many different types of moss and lichen and heather, berry plants, mushrooms, all the little critters and bugs, and the colors the peatlands produce. So many different shades of green, blues, yellows. The greens especially stand out to me, as I think peatlands have the most vivid greens I ever have seen in my life.
Interview with Nelly. The recorded answers were not read by the author.
Hi, I'm Nelly, and I was born and raised in Estonia. I left the country in 2019 and have been living abroad since. I have now found my home in Manchester, in the UK. I work as a landscape architect, keeping our cities as green as possible. Last year, I was in Restoration Academy, organized by RE-PEAT, which was honestly such a cool experience, especially the restoration camp in Finland a year ago. How is it already a year?
Do you have a particular memory to share about peatlands in Estonia?
Now that I think about it, I have never been to a bog later than 8 a.m. The best time to go to a bog is at sunrise, especially if you go to one that has a little watchtower. All the vegetation in bogs is generally low and golden in hue, which makes sunrise so gorgeous to watch. I think my favorite Estonian peatland memory is from the end of July a couple of years ago. I still hadn't gone to sleep at 4 a.m., being in the middle of a deep conversation after a birthday party, when three of my friends called me and said, "We're just about to set off to a bog. Do you want to come along? We can come pick you up." And I thought, perfect timing. I hadn't gone to sleep yet, so I don't even have to wake up early for it. It was the prettiest golden sunrise I have ever seen. Seriously. And a dip in the bog lake woke us all up. We then walked back to the car with blankets wrapped around us. They came prepared, and had a lovely hot chocolate in a petrol station, the only place open at that hour. Anyways, not the most exciting story, but I always smile when I think about it.
Perhaps you could say a little more about your relationship to peatlands.
I love folklore in every form: myths, legends, music, and dance. And I feel like peatlands are connected to folklore on a deeper level. Bogs as landscapes are ancient and hold a lot of power, I think. There's folklore characters and mystical forest creatures who are believed to live in bogs. And in general, a lot of legends and folk stories are inspired by or based on peatlands. I think Estonia, being one of the least religious countries in the world to this day, has only encouraged these sort of stories to emerge and stay, and I think it's beautiful even if people nowadays don't believe in them anymore.
What would you most want to share with people who are new to these peatlands?
Having semi-regular walks in bogs is probably the best thing you could do for your lungs. Fresh air and complete silence is the best reset ever. I always feel super calm and refreshed after a lovely walk in a peatland.
Now that you live in the UK and work as a landscape architect, is there something people often ask you about Estonian peatlands? Why are they so precious?
Sadly, I don't think many people think about peatlands at all in the UK. In Estonia, peatlands are so tied into the culture, and it's hard to find a single person who hasn't been to a peatland. But unfortunately, most people don't know enough about peatlands over here in the UK. And the people I work with, being landscape architects and ecologists, are obviously fairly environmentally conscious. So you can only imagine how poor peatland knowledge is amongst people who don't work in a nature-related field. That is definitely something that should change, and why RE-PEAT's work is so needed.
Is there something more you want to say about why peatland activism is important to you?
It's important to me because it makes me so ridiculously angry seeing how the importance of peatlands either isn't understood or cared about, or both. They are so important, and it's sad to see how many peatlands have already been excavated or drained. So the next best thing we can do is to raise knowledge, protect the remaining healthy peatlands we have, and restore the poorly ones.
Interview with Mary Liz. Do you have a particular memory to share about peatlands in Estonia?
It was 3 years ago when my husband's family was visiting from Hungary to attend our wedding. And we did many sightseeings in both nature and city, but the most memorable is our tour to the Marimetsa bog. There is a boardwalk that starts from going through the forest for like a kilometer or so, and then after it, a wide view opens up with those familiar small pine trees and endless wet fields, as I well know and love to be one of the magnificent peatlands of Estonia. We had a wonderful walk where I told them all about peatlands, and it was just so beautiful to see how I could instill knowledge in them that they didn't possess before. They were really mesmerized, not only about the beauty of it, but all the other aspects as well. After that, we had a dip in one of the bog pools, a really wonderful experience that everyone should try out at least once in their life, I think. And it is also believed to have many healthy and beautifying properties.
Perhaps you could say a little more about your relationship to peatlands.
It is a funny thing that I grew up in Estonia and spent the first 22 years of my life there. And I knew about peatlands and off peatlands from the parents, from when I was a child. We had some trips there. But it was usually only like from a viewpoint of their natural beauty. And also remember very strictly that, oh, you can never step on the bog because your footprint is gonna stay there for like hundreds of years. But never actually know why. And yeah, there was stories about the boardwalk, and I knew from my grandmother about berry picking, and also heard some mythologies like stories of sirens, stories of people getting lost and stuck in bogs, living their lives there. Yeah, but nobody was really talking about the other side, about their intrinsic values as carbon storages, biodiversity hubs. It is so unfortunate that it was only when I moved all the way to Austria that I learned about all of this. And I remember clearly that it was an afternoon lecture. We were sitting in a windowless classroom, quite tired already, listening to some lecture about ecosystems. And then suddenly the professor mentioned peatlands, and I thought to myself, like, well, wait, I know this one's quite well. And then he started talking about all the ecosystem services they provide and how important they are. And I was puzzled. I was like, what? How do I not know that? And then I started immediately Googling and realized what I've been missing out on. I approached the professor after the lecture to ask about writing my master thesis with him. Shortly after, we had a field trip to an alpine beet bog in Austria. And after that, I found myself in a lab looking at the methanogenic pathways of the very same bog. And then shortly after, found my way to RE-PEAT. And this is actually like quite a sad story, that I had to go all the way across to another country to find about the value and importance of my home country's beautiful ecosystems, which I now know about and can appreciate ever more every time I visit one back home.
Now that you live in Hungary and work as the RE-PEAT peatland activist, is there something people often ask you about Estonian peatlands and why they are important to you?
The knowledge about peatlands is quite low in Hungary because most of the country was drained for agriculture in the last century when the Hungarian plains were transformed from wetlands to fertile agricultural areas. Many people here don't know of them, let alone about their importance. I'm always really happy to share my knowledge and share my experiences, show pictures, tell stories of our beautiful peatlands, and see like how people, they really listen and they're really excited and they're really like, wow, like what is that? This is so cool. And they're really left amazed and surprised also when I recommend them to visit one of the last peatlands in Hungary, in Söce, in the western part, and they don't even know about it. You often still see advertisements here about how good peat is in horticulture and how nothing can replace it as a substance, and they barely mention the negative effects of peat mining. In the best case scenario, they say that it is an extremely slowly renewable resource. This is what I want to share from Estonia to the Hungarian people, and even more, a knowledge that goes beyond what the eyes can see. That yes, the Estonian and all the other peatlands are absolutely beautiful in all over the world, but they hold so much more than that. They hold our histories, tell our stories, provide home for our biodiversity, support our migratory birds, clean our water, offer shelter from ever urbanizing world, and mitigate climate change, just to name a few, because the list really goes on.
Is there something more you would like to say about why peatland activism is such a big part of your life?
When I was young, I always wanted to do something good, and I was like, I want to save the world. That's why I went to study environmental subjects, and I'm always been quite environmentally conscious. But today, I really feel that that is what I'm doing. That is what RE-PEAT is doing. That through our work, through sharing our knowledge and experience, I and we are contributing to saving the world by putting peatlands on the map and changing hearts and minds for and through peatlands.